Social media is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, we're able to communicate with people around the world instantly. On the other, people use the anonymity that the internet brings to conduct nefarious business or say things that they wouldn't be able to in real life, whether that's good or bad. However, since the advent of social media and the internet, the way that cases have been investigated has taken a dramatic turn. Here are 5 times social media solved cases. Number 5. In October of 2017, Redford Township police officer Jennifer Mansfield went live on the force's Facebook page to give community updates and interact with people she was responsible for keeping safe. All was going smoothly, with comments rolling in about local goings-on until Jennifer realized she had a troll in the comments. Jennifer told Fox 2 Detroit News, "We talked about an Angels Night coming up on 6 Mile, where we would be closing the road for the event. The troll told Jennifer that if the police close down the road, I'm shutting down the police station. This was a serious threat towards a member of law enforcement, and the troll even claimed that he would poison children's candy on Halloween." She immediately took this threat seriously and wasted no time in hunting down the troll. The profile he used, by the name of Champagne Torino, was fake, but it didn't take long for a good bit of old detective work to find his real name. The troll was identified as 21-year-old Michael Zaydell, and incidentally, he was wanted for a probation violation after he'd been charged with a DUI, leaving the scene of an accident and assault. Zaydell had been evading police detection thus far, but Jennifer had the wanted man right in her grasp. He went on to privately message the Redford Township Police's Facebook page, saying, "I'm not worried about it. If your next post gets 1,000 shares, I'll turn myself in with 12 donuts, and that's a promise. And I'll pick up every piece of litter around all of the public schools. Let's see if you can get those shares." Astonishingly, that's just what happened. Redford Township Police requested that the post be shared far and wide, garnering over 4,000 shares within the first few hours. The police had kept their end of the deal, and now it was time for Zaydell to keep his. Zaydell was a man of his word, and a few days later he turned up at the Redford Township Police Department with 12 glazed donuts and a bagel. He was arrested upon entering the police station and given 39 days in prison. Zaydell was also wanted in other countries for various crimes. Thanks to Zaydell's cockiness, he ended himself back in jail when he may have otherwise gotten away unscathed. Number 4. Calvin Hawkins is an example of hope and never giving up in the hunt for justice. In July of 2011, his 18-year-old daughter, Nikisha Hodges Hawkins, was shot in Kruger Memorial Park in Michigan. He said, "She was a fun-loving little kid. Everybody loved her. She never even got to see her diploma at all." Nikisha was just days away from graduating high school and was looking forward to college when that was taken away from her on a July afternoon. Nikisha's case soon went cold as none of the witnesses were willing to come forward to testify as to what had happened that day. With a lack of leads or evidence, police were at a dead end. Months passed for the Hodges Hawkins family, each day more agonizing than the last. All they wanted was justice for their little girl. Desperate, Calvin turned to Facebook to plead for answers. He posted to Facebook Live outside of the police department asking for any information about his daughter's killer. The comments were flooded with messages saying that someone knew something, but these messages were not specific enough for police to take action. Undeterred, Calvin carried on posting about Nikisha's case, with his posts going viral and catching the attention of true crime lovers around the world. As his social media presence grew, so did interest in Nikisha's case, and in 2016, Michigan City Police arrested 21-year-old Charles Guerin. Guerin's trial was set for April of 2017 when he took a plea deal, as there was some reasonable doubt as to whether he had actually fired the shot that killed Nikisha. In a bizarre turn, the judge rejected his plea deal and ordered Guerin to face a full jury of his peers. Guerin was found guilty of murder and criminal recklessness and sentenced to serve 50 years in prison. Thanks to the determination of Calvin and him going viral on social media, new tips and clues were given to police, and finally, the Hodges Hawkins family had justice for their daughter who was robbed of her future. Number 3. Whether you love it or hate it, Reddit has certainly been a huge presence in the amateur sleuthing world. From subreddits discussing cold cases to subreddits where you can find information about the most niche of topics, it's been a critical tool in the solving of cold cases in the last few years. On August 9th, 2018, Susan Rainwater woke up to her husband with a cup of coffee and a kiss before leaving their Edenville, Washington home. Like she did most mornings, Susan had planned to go for a 30-minute bike ride, cycling down State Route 7 on 320th Street East. Tragedy struck when Susan was hit by a car and thrown into a nearby ditch. The driver sped away from the scene, leaving Susan to die alone in the ditch. When she didn't return home, her husband went out looking for her. Heartbreakingly, he was too late and found his wife lying in the ditch. With a lack of evidence, the police were left to check CCTV and debris evidence from the scene. They were able to deduce that Susan had been hit by a lifted black pickup truck. Sadly, they were unable to see the license plate or any other information. The local police department tweeted photos of the debris and Susan's bike in hopes that it may jog someone's memory. That's when Reddit stepped in. The user, Cordyceps Fungi, posted to the subreddit "What is this thing?" with the photo of the debris, hoping that car enthusiasts may be able to recognize it. And it paid off. Within a few hours, a user by the name of Jeff Nuts chimed in, saying it was a 1989 Chevy Silverado headlamp bezel. Armed with this new information, police appealed to anyone, either with a 1989 Chevrolet truck or anyone who knew someone who had one, to come forward. An anonymous tip was called in and led them to 37-year-old Jeremy Thomas Simon, who owned a 1986 Chevrolet K10. When approached by police, Simon claimed he'd hit a deer, thus explaining the damage to his car. However, police told them that they had CCTV footage of him hitting Susan Rainwater, and Simon soon confessed. He told police that he had fallen asleep at the wheel as he had not slept well the night before. He was using energy drinks to stay awake, but must have momentarily drifted due to sleep. Within the split second that he fell asleep, he swerved off the road, hitting 66-year-old Susan Rainwater. Simon was charged with vehicular homicide, hit and run resulting in death, and unlawful possession of a controlled substance. The last charge was due to police finding a small bag of drugs in his car. At his court arraignment, Simon was sentenced to just 4.5 years as part of a drug treatment program that aims to reform offenders. This sentence outraged Rainwater's family and members of the community. Her daughter, Leah Miller, told the News Tribune in 2019, "A couple of years behind bars didn't seem long enough." The original thread on Reddit has since been archived, but it's still available to look at. Posters eagerly updated the thread with news of Simon's arrest and commented on his actions. Number 2. This next case was solved thanks to the work of an amateur genealogist and sleuths on Reddit. In 2015, the amateur genealogical researcher was looking through records in Cleveland, Ohio, attempting to locate family members when they came across a listing that read, "Unknown white female bones." Haunted by this, the researcher pushed further, finding that the doe had been found in 1975 in Strongsville, Ohio. The researcher then reached out to the Cleveland Metro Parks Ranger, who was able to provide her with the case file. The researcher posted this information to Reddit, whose users, in turn, posted the information to the website Web Sleuths, a place where amateur and professional detectives alike get together and discuss cases in a forum-based setting. It was on the Web Sleuths website that the case file caught the attention of none other than Carl Koppelman. For those that are unfamiliar, Carl Koppelman is responsible for producing hundreds, if not thousands, of reconstructed drawings of unidentified persons throughout North America. What's even more astounding is that Carl takes on these projects without payment, all while still working at his day job as an accountant. Carl created a composite sketch of the doe found in 1975 and circulated it back through the Web Sleuths forum and to Reddit. It was then that missing Linda Pagano was added to the Name Us database, and instantly people began commenting on the likeliness. Doe's remains were exhumed, and DNA was collected from the Pagano family, and it was a match. The 1975 Strongsville Jane Doe was formally identified as Linda Pagano, who had gone missing in September of 1974. Linda had been shot in the head before her killer had left her body in a secluded place. He also went to various lengths to conceal her identity, but it wasn't enough to escape the grips of modern science. Finally, the Pagano family had answers after decades of wondering what had become of their sweet Linda. While Linda had now been found, the same cannot be said about her killer, and the hunt for justice continues. Number 1. When you ask someone who isn't into true crime about the Grateful Doe case, the first word uttered out of their mouth will always be Reddit. This case is the most prominent example of Reddit banding together to solve a 20-year-old cold case. On June 29, 1995, 2 men were involved in a car crash along US Route 58 West in Emporia, Virginia. Neither of the men were wearing seatbelts at the time, and both men died as a result of the crash. For law enforcement, it seemed like a rather cut and dry case, albeit a horrible one. Law enforcement had no idea that the car crash would span a 20-year mystery that would be solved by amateur sleuths on Reddit. Police were unable to identify one of the men, and he became known simply as Grateful Doe. This is because he had 2 Grateful Dead tickets in his clothing. It appeared as though the man had been traveling around the US following the band, the Grateful Dead. Doe had also had a yellow Bic lighter, loose change, and a letter that read, "Jason, sorry we had to go. See you around," and included his phone number. The driver of the vehicle was identified as 21-year-old Michael E. Hager, and police quickly discovered that the 2 shared little to no connections. It's been hypothesized that Doe was picked up by Michael as a hitchhiker. The case went cold until amateur sleuth Layla Betts stumbled across the case. Fascinated by Grateful Doe and hoping to get to the bottom of the mystery, she created the subreddit titled r/Grateful Doe, which is still active today with people hoping to solve other Doe cases. Thousands upon thousands of Redditors poured into the subreddit, offering their 2 cents, but one message really caught Layla's eye. A man by the name of Steve messaged her, saying that he knew the man in the composite sketch. He said the sketch looked like his old roommate, Jason Callahan. In early 1995, Jason moved out of his apartment that he shared, leaving behind no forwarding address or information as to where he was headed. He simply told roommates that he was going to follow the Grateful Dead, and with that, he left. His family were concerned that they hadn't heard from him in months. His mother wanted to file a missing persons report, but wasn't sure how to go about it. She had no idea of his whereabouts and hadn't heard from him since June of 1995. She told the Guardian newspaper no one ever thought to report him missing because they thought he wanted to be missing. His family took no contact as a sign that Jason was off living his life how he wanted to, and that when he was ready, they would reconnect. Sadly, that wasn't the case, and the Callahan family waited 20 years to find out the truth. Jason's half-sister, Shannon Callahan, was contacted by members of the Grateful Doe subreddit, and it was in that moment that she knew that Grateful Doe was her brother, Jason. She says, "I honestly started shaking. When I looked at that picture, it looked like my dad was looking back at me. He had the same face and even a lot of the same facial features, my forehead and the shape of my face. I knew in that moment, deep down, that that was Jason." Shannon agreed to take a DNA test with the support of the Grateful Doe subreddit. A year passed as laboratories tested and processed the results. It was an incredibly agonizing year for Shannon and the Reddit community, who had become deeply invested, but their patience paid off. A year later, the DNA came back as a match. The 1995 Grateful Doe was identified as Jason Callahan. When the news was publicized, Layla said, "It was a very sobering moment, because at that moment, it wasn't that this case had been solved after 20 years. It was that Jason Callahan was finally going home. His family had a resolution." Thanks to the efforts of Layla and the Grateful Doe community, Jason's family were finally able to lay him to rest in the way that he wanted to. While it wasn't the resolution to his disappearance that his family had hoped for, Jason was finally home. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.